Hello and welcome to the What's the Story podcast. I'm Jarlath Kyan.
And I'm Victoria Houston. Each week we'll be focusing on the stories that matter to you. Stories about the people and places that make Tyrone so special.
The What's the Story podcast is brought to you by the Northwest News Group, who also print our much-loved newspapers, the Ulster Herald, Strabane Chronicle and the Tyrone Herald. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the What's the Story podcast. I'm your host this week, Thomas Maher, and I'm here with a great guest. She's a Tyrone author, a bestseller, and she's currently working on the first ever Irish country musical. That's part of what she's doing at the minute, but you'll know her from her books. Her name's Emma Heatherington. Emma, how are you?
I'm really good, Thomas. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, no problem. It's always a pleasure. No, Emma, well, how about we start off, we go right back to the start. Tell me a little bit about your early years, about growing up in Tyrone and how that sort of informed your work as an author, if we can start off with that.
Yes, looking back, I suppose I can see how I was writing from a very, very young age, mainly song lyrics to start with. So I used to sit in my bedroom on a Sunday afternoon and with a wee Casio keyboard. You'd be too young to remember those, but
I had one as well.
You had one as well. I remember getting one for Christmas, and I would sit on a Sunday afternoon and make up songs, and I just absolutely loved it. It was something that just came to me as a hobby, I suppose, or something to do in my spare time. I loved music, and I was, suppose, reared on country music. Some of the American country stars like Nancy Griffith and Vince Gill and people like that. My mother was always listening to those, so I had a love of country music from a very young age. So the lyrics came first, or the songs came first, if you like, and then into later years, I just always loved creating. I went into a career in PR, which was creative in itself, but I knew that there was something else that I really wanted to try. And I remember seeing Cecilia Ahern on the Late Late Show one night, and she just released P.S. I Love You. And I remember just thinking, gosh, I would absolutely love to be able to write a book. So I started off just in my spare time. But I had three young children and a full-time job at the time. So I was still in my 20s, but I would have done that at night, when they were in bed. And my aunt convinced me to enter a short story competition once in a magazine. Both entered it, and to my great delight, I came first in that competition, and that gave me a bit of confidence then to go on and write something a bit longer, if you like. So I got a book deal with a very, very small publisher in Dublin. And it started off there, and my first book was called Crazy for You. It was published in 2007, and since then things have just kind of very organically grown. And 18 novels later, I'm now with Penguin in the UK and Ireland, and published in many, many different languages across Europe and into Canada and other wonderful places that I've never been.
18 books is amazing. So it is, Emma, you're quite prolific from 2007. Like that's an achievement. Do you have a process when you're gonna start writing the book, Emma? What way do you what comes first when you think about, was it characters or story, or what way does that come about?
Normally, an idea for a story comes first, so it can start off with something very, very small, just from something maybe that I've heard, someone say, or a real life account from someone who's gone through something. And I just take that tiny, tiny, or maybe like a what if, what if this happened and then that happened. So it can start off with something very, very small. I think over the past probably 10 years, I have developed more of my own style. And, I think writing's like any art form. The more you practice, the better you get. And over the past 10 years, I think my books have become a lot more emotionally driven. So very real life issues, relationships and friendships and grief and motherhood and um all sorts of issues I try and touch on within stories and characters that people can relate to. So I'm deliberately always kind of thinking of new ideas and new places, of course, to set the stories in. I think that has become a bit of a style of mine, is to choose a location and really make that a character as well. Um, so my process, I suppose, isn't very structured. I can't say I do have structures that I follow and that I've developed, but I think on a day-to-day basis, I work a lot in my head and I think over the story for ages and ages and thrash it out and maybe make notes in a notebook. And then when I do sit down to the laptop, I find that it comes out, a lot more quicker because I've done all the prep, a lot of prep in my head.
And tell me about some of your books that you've written, Emma. Just to tell some of the people who maybe haven't seen them before. A little bit of summary about a few of them, Emma. I know that they've sold really well. Like I've so they have. So tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, so the last three books have been published by Penguin. So they all have done very, very well, yes. They're all festive themed romances. So again, the setting is very important. The time of year is very important. So that adds to the whole feel of the story. And like a backdrop of winter is lovely, cozy time, to snuggle up and read a nice book of comfort, and that gets you feeling things, all the emotions. So the I'll tell you a bit about the last one, I suppose. The last book, which is just still out, and I'm still getting messages. I got a message this morning from a reader who's just finished it, which is lovely. So it's set in Balahy in County Derry, and which is, of course, known as Seamus Heaney country, and I'm a big fan of Seamus Heaney's work as well. And it's about two people who first meet when they're teenagers, and then life, takes them in different directions. And when we meet them, they both have about 20 years, between their last encounter. It's all set around like a big house, which is based again on a real place in Ballyscullion Park in Balahy. And so it tells the story of these two wonderful characters who have gone in different paths, and it's a will they, won't they romance when they pick it all up again, and they realise that they had a lot of unfinished business. And it's based around a lovely party on Christmas Eve. It's called Every Christmas Eve. So that one has been really well received, and I'm just delighted that the books continue to resonate with readers, and they're waiting on the next one. But I am going to be moving not away from the festive books because I'm going to be I've just finished next year's. Actually, I'm editing it at the minute, but I've also signed a new book deal to do a summer book from 2027 on. So I've just doubled my workload. Basically, I've taken on an extra book a year, so I'll be having a summer book and a winter book. I can give you a bit of an exclusive on that one. It's going to be called Summer at the Farmhouse, and it's set in one of my favorite places, Downings in County Donegal. So it'll be out next summer, 2027. Um, so lots to keep me busy, put it like that.
And you've got the musical as well that you're currently working on as well. You're very, very busy. Tell me little bit about that. I know that you've worked on memoirs before for some famous country musicians and things, and I know that you were talking earlier about your love of country music. So tell me a little bit about the musical.
Yeah, so I suppose the idea came to me about 8 years ago now when I was on tour with Nathan Carter. I had written Nathan's autobiography, and the previous year I'd written Philomena Begley's autobiography. So that was a great honour to work on both of those books, but it also gave me a very I suppose intriguing behind the scenes look at the life of a country star on the road. And again, that was enough to set off the what ifs and the creation of a character around that lifestyle. And then it's combining, like I said, my love of country music and of telling stories. The idea for a country musical set in Ireland seemed like a really obvious thing, but it's never been done before. So I knew how to get my skates on and get it done as quickly as I could. So I started, like I say, writing it about 8 years ago. But when I look back on the earlier versions now and the version that exists that's gone into production, they're very, very different because, again, I've fine-tuned it and I've crafted it and I've worked on the characters so hard, and I've brought in, supporting characters that do so well in my novels. A lot of readers say they love the supporting characters as much as they love the main characters. So I wanted to really develop those and flesh them out. So I've got it in a really, really good place. So it's a love story. It's a bit, I suppose, like one of my books, only it's set to a backdrop of music, and it's on stage rather than in a book. So it's a love story between a country singer called Luke Adams. Like Luke is like on the cusp of I suppose like Nashville standards level fame, and he spends a lot of time in Nashville. Um, and he's kind of lost himself a wee bit because he's grieving, and he's never taken the time to stop and grieve his girlfriend who passed away 3 years ago. When we first met him, he's facing burnout, which I think is a big thing, in today's world of music. We see those headlines all the time now about the reality of these young music stars who are pushed to their limits. So that's kind of what he's like. He's really, really, he's on the edge, and nobody's really listening to him, and he's frustrated and he's tired. But to the outside world, he has it all. He's a good looking lad. He's talented, and he's got the world at his feet. Um, and then we have Rosie Ryan, who's the female lead, who's the country girl. It's called Country Girl, the musical. I should have said that at the start. She's the female lead, and Rosie is a bit of the opposite to him in that she has this gorgeous village life. She has inherited a pub from her grandmother, who raised her along with her mother. But she's lost both her mother and her grandmother, so she's on her own now, and she's just trying to decide, look, do I stay here and bring back the magic to this wonderful pub that I've grown up in? It used to be a fantastic country music venue. Now it has lost its soul. It's very quiet. It's there's nobody really comes to it anymore, and she knows if she stays, she's going to have to really, really put the effort into making this place what it used to be. Or should she pack up and head off to pastures new and start a new life? I'm just thinking of Australia, which is again is a lot of young people. I have a daughter at the minute who's in her mid-20s, and she's doing exactly that. So she's heading off to Australia soon. So it's two very relatable characters, I suppose, on many different levels. So when Luke walks into Rosie's bar one night when he's trying to get away from it all after this big gig, back home, their two worlds collide, and there's a huge connection between the two of them. She really understands him. She understands his grief, of course, because she's lost people in her life, and she gives him an ear that he hasn't had in a long time. So, but of course, he has to go back on the road the next day, and they spend a beautiful day together. And then after that, it is will they, won't they, again, a bit like my books. Will they be able to make this happen? He's got his big tour, all his opportunities coming, and she has this itch to go to Australia. So that's the base. I don't give anything else away, but it's full of country music that will suit all tastes. So I'm talking about, your like your younger country fans, like who love like Riley Green and Ella Langley and Lainey Wilson and Luke Combs and Zach Bryan. So we've got songs in there that appeal to that type of country music fan. We've also got a few jives in there and a few line dances in there for maybe some of those country fans who grew up in the 90s, who remember those good old Garth Brooks days. And then, of course, some of the more traditional country oldies. I've particularly or deliberately written music that suits all kind of country styles. So it's suitable for everyone from young kids right up to grandparents, and it's going to be a really, really good night out.
Emma, you're a very busy person. So you're...
I am. But when you do something that you love so much, I don't think it feels like work. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, but I really honestly do love doing what I do. And I've spent all morning working on a song called The Beach or the Bar Stool, which is one of Rosie's big intro songs. And I just can't wait to get up onto the stage. I just cannot wait to get to November until we get to see it. Because it's all in my head at the minute. So I can't wait to show it to everyone else, and hopefully they'll enjoy it as much as I am enjoying putting it together.
It's going to be in Armagh, isn't that right? In the theatre there?
Yeah, that's right. So we open in Armagh on the 11th of November. So 11/11. And then it runs for 4 nights. So Wednesday to Saturday. And after that, we're hoping to take it on the road. But our focus is primarily in Armagh at the minute. So 4 nights in Armagh Marketplace. Tickets are already selling, which is very, very encouraging, considering like we're running in January and I'm only starting to get the word out now. So, which is very encouraging for me, because it seems it shows that there is a demand for a show like this. And I can tell you this, it's going to take you on a bit of an emotional roller coaster too, because I was reading through the script last night, and I know the parts of it that that might maybe hopefully make the audience shed a tear in a nice cathartic way. But there will be a big, nice happy ending that'll have you dancing in the aisles and going out singing the songs in your head. So that's my vision for it anyway. So I can't wait till November.
I know this isn't because we've chatted before, Emma. I know this isn't your first time you've been on the stage. I know you sort of grew up sort of around the theatre and all the rest. So tell me a little bit about growing up in Tyrone and around the sort of local theatre world and all that sort of stuff. I know you had family and stuff involved in local
Oh,
theatres, if that's right, isn't it?
that's right. So like I was very blessed to grow up in that I suppose culture of theatre and musical theatre, and while I was never a performer myself, centre stage, and I had never any desire to be. I preferred the creative nuts and bolts of putting a show together and writing the script and writing the music and things like that. But one of my earliest memories actually is when my late mother was playing the part of Mrs. Bedwin in the Bardic Theatre's production of Oliver, back in about, I'm going to guess, 82 or 83. Um, and like going to rehearsals with her in Eden Door Hall uh, for Oliver. So like I was probably only about say 5 or 6 at that time. And so that was normal to me, and Mummy had played Mary Poppins in the very first Bardic Theatre Donaghmore Youth Club production. So seeing her on stage, and then growing up just in that environment, I was in a few Bardic shows, like just as ensemble and stuff as a young teenager, and I just absolutely loved it. So watching people like Sean Floon, who is Mummy's cousin, who formed the Bardic and who grew it, and nurtured it all those years and took it to where it is today. Um, I suppose it gave me a great belief that this can be done, and it is a thing you can, try and do if you want to. So, and made it maybe more of a natural step, whereas maybe if I hadn't have grown up in that environment, I might have thought it a bit alien, to try and write something. But so I ended up actually writing a show for Bardic back in 2000, and I'm going to get this wrong, I think it was 2005. Yeah, it was 20 years ago. I'm right. It was 20 years ago in December past, where Sean threw me the big challenge of writing that year's Bardic show. He wanted to do a Christmas pantomime, and he had kind of the idea for it, but he wanted me to write the script. So that was me completely thrown into the deep end, and all of a sudden it wasn't in the Bardic Theatre at all. It was in the Dungannon Leisure Centre, which was nearly 3 times the audience. And all of a sudden, we were off. But I'll never forget that feeling of saying, hearing the words that I've written. I suppose that's the difference in being, a scriptwriter and a novelist. When you write a book, yes, readers come back and they tell you about it, and it's fabulous. When you write a script, you actually hear the actors reading back the words, and that can be really, really mind blowing, when they hear that all read back. So it's a surreal experience. So that was that bug. That was the start of that bug. And I knew that I really wanted to do that again and again. So here we are 20 years later, and Country Girl is my own production. I'm managing the whole production myself. I've got a great team around me. I've got Damien Cullen as musical director, who people will know from More Party or Elbow. And I've got Lauren Hamill, who is a fantastic drama facilitator, and she runs her own stage school in Armagh. She's the director. And then I've got Linda Wright, who I'm sure locals will know, as she runs her own dance school, and she's the choreographer. And the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, should I say, have a great history in that we've worked on many, many projects down the years together. So it's like getting the old gang back together, and we're all equally excited, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a team that was really, really enthusiastic about this, and who would rise to the challenge, and they all are. And then obviously I've written all the lyrics myself for the songs, and I've also teamed up with some local musicians to help put melodies to some of those songs. So Lee Rogers is a fantastic Carrickfergus-based singer-songwriter with Nashville connections. He and I wrote the opening song. And then Port Mohan from All Folked Up is working on 2 of them. My brother David McCrory, who again people might know from the local pub scene. He's a great songwriter as well. He's working on two. And Kiva Loughearn, who people will know from being one of the best wedding singers, if not the best wedding singer around. She's a fantastic voice, my goodness. Kiva and I wrote a song during lockdown, so it fits perfectly into the story. So I'm using that one. And then closer to home, again, me and my fiance Jim McKee, who again has an illustrious career behind him of music. Some of his songs were featured in a movie called Songs for Amy. So we are putting in the hours at home, writing lots and lots and lots of music for my lyrics. So it's a real passion project, and it's something that I have great belief in, and I'm very, very excited about.
We'll go back to the books if that's okay a little bit, Emma. I had a wee look just through a popular bookseller, and I couldn't get over the amount of international things, because a lot of your books are set in sort of rural Ireland and sort of very Irish centric, but seeing the sort of there's comments there from all over Europe and from America. How does that feel to have these sort of international audience, where Balahi and places like that that are I'm seeing to so much relate with your work as well.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at like phenomenons like Dairy Girls, that translates all around the world, and you think that's our humor and that's our dialect, and how would anybody else ever understand it? So it is quite hard to get your head around, how do people in foreign countries translate Irish wit and Irish humor and Irish names and Irish dialogue and all the rest, that and places and even pronunciations of the names. I'm sure they can't get their head or their tongue around them, but the stories do seem to relate. So I'll never forget, getting a photograph of a book club in Boston who were holding my book, The Legacy of Lucy Hart, and like that I just couldn't get my head around that for ages. Like it was just a dream come true, to think that there are people so far away reading your stories and connecting with them so much that they want to reach out and let you know how much they enjoyed them. And then you go into Europe, into like my cousin Kathy was in holidays in Budapest there recently, and she walked into a bookshop in Budapest and saw my book in Hungarian sitting on one of the shelves. And again, like it's crazy. And my friend Shona, she's from Canada, and when she was at home in Toronto a few years ago, her and her sister went shopping to a big bookstore over there, and she found my book and held it up and got photos taken. So the books have traveled a lot more than I have, put it like that, and they can speak a lot more languages than I can. So I love that they're bringing people here, or they're at least, and even locals, even people who have never been to Fanad, for example, where the lighthouse is, where my book this Christmas was set. They're going now to see the lighthouse because it's a real place. Or Slave Lake Cliffs, in the South Donegal, or more recently, like you mentioned, Balahi. I also have mentioned some lovely Tyrone villages, and I'm delighted to say that the book that's coming out this October will be partially set in Moy. And also in a way from a village called Ballinalek. And we also go into Ashford Castle in County Mayo in this story. So I'd like to spread it around, because readers have said to me they love following, the paths of the books. So maybe if they might try Fanad Lighthouse this year, and then they'll go next year just to check out Slave Lake Cliffs or the Milestone Hotel in London. I did base one of maybe Next Christmas was set partially there, in a very real hotel. And again, the hotel group have told me, that people are coming in to the hotel because of that. So it's lovely to hear that. And maybe sometime we'll be sponsored like by Tourism Ireland or something. Get some perks in there for myself. No, but it's lovely. I used to make up names of places, in the earlier books, but I think that was probably a confidence thing. I didn't know that it was okay to say the name of a place. So, like I'll never forget one day in Donaghmore Market Square, like way back in 2007 when Crazy Few was out, and it was a really rainy day, and I was sitting in the car, and I got a knock on the window from this girl I didn't know. And when I put down the window, she said, "Can I just ask you something? Is your book Crazy Few, is that meant to be set in Killybegs?" And I said, "Yes." And she was like, brilliant. I'm way back to the office, tell everybody I was right. And now I think, why did I not just say it was set in Killybegs instead of trying to make up a name? But so now I do that deliberately. I pick places that I know have enough character and appeal that maybe someday those readers from all those wonderful countries and places might come and visit.
And when you are sitting down to write a song or a book or anything, is it important to you that the sort of does it have like a connection to you? And everything that you write has a connection to yourself and your experience and all the rest of it. But or is it more of an imaginary process, or what ways does that work, Emma?
I think it's probably a bit of both because while I never write about people I know, obviously, or about myself and as a person, I don't put myself into like a scenario or create a character about myself. I do like take elements of real life and experiences of real life, um, and then I create a fictional world around that. So I'm thinking things like the book The Legacy of Lucy Hart. Again, it was based around the theme of organ donation. So that idea came from another family member who had been through organ donation as a child and how he felt years later about the person who had donated their organ or the family that had made that decision. There's a lot of emotion, around that. So, or things like grief, we've all loved and lost, or heartache. Everyone's had their heart broken at some stage of their life when they get to a certain age. So it's a bit more about the emotion surrounding a scenario than the actual scenario itself, if that makes sense. And I like to, and I've learned a lot. I've worked with a lot of brilliant editors along the way, and I'm thinking of, my time with HarperCollins and now my time with Penguin. The editors, they're so skilled at what they do, and that they nearly like squeeze all that emotion out of you, and I remember some of the books, that I thought, that has to be it now. And then they would just push you, to get that wee bit more. And now that all comes again, like a bit more naturally to me that I know that that's the level of emotion, be it through humor or be it through, a particularly moving scene in a story. I want to hit the heartstrings, in all different ways. And I do find myself when I'm writing some of those and even the songs in this show and Country Girl, some of them are tear jerkers. Um, and I find myself, even reading through the lyrics. And my eldest daughter, Jordan, she read the script one day and she said, "Good luck to whoever's singing that song." She said, "I don't know how they're going to get through it." So, and that was only by reading the lyrics. So, that made me very happy because I thought, well, if she's getting that, that means hopefully the audience will get it too. But yeah, it's therapeutic in many ways as well to write moving stories and moving scenes or moving songs.
No, Emma, no, I think that's everything we need for the podcast. So it is. And no, and thank you very much for joining me, Emma. Where can people find more out about you, if that's okay, if they want to follow you on social media or see about your books or see about Country Girl, where can they do that?
Yeah, it's great. So the I'm on social media on Facebook and Instagram mostly. And the books are available in all good bookstores. There's still some signed copies actually of Every Christmas Eve in Jim McKay Art Gallery here in Donaghmore. You can get them in Sheehy's and Cookstown locally, and in Waterstones and in all good bookshops, and of course on all the online. They're all available in audio as well and on ebook. And then tickets for Country Girl, the musical, are available online from Marketplace Theatre Armagh, which I do believe is visitarmagh.com. Get them quick. They're going to go quick. So don't delay if you want to go to see Country Girl in November and be part of the premiere of Ireland's first country musical.